That is the question, rather. The gentleman will have an answer and a debate. He says no, but let's get to it, folks. Let's stay with the finals. We talked about us hitting the road on Thursday. Let's talk about Tim Duncan. He's in San Antonio. After the win on Saturday, he said last year's finals left a bad taste in their mouths, and they're glad that it's the Heat again. LeBron James responded on Monday.
It's unbelievable to regain that focus after exactly that devastating loss that we had last year. But we're back here, and we're excited about it, and we got 4 more to win. We'll do it this time.
They don't like us. They don't. I could sense it from Timmy's comments over the last couple of days. They wanted this. They wanted us, and we'll be ready for a challenge.
Bayless.
Champion.
What do you make of this?
Stephen A. Smith, I could be wrong, but I do not think the San Antonio Spurs have a single drop of bad blood or ill will directed at the Miami Heat. The Spurs do not hate or even dislike the Heat because they don't hate or dislike any other team they play against. The Spurs just keep doing what they do. They don't want to fight you. They don't want to trash talk you. They don't want to use any Lance Stevenson / Dennis Rodman antics against you. I actually think the Spurs love LeBron James. I think Pop would, in his heart of hearts, love to one year, coach LeBron James, who would make a great San Antonio Spur. I think Tim Duncan relishes the competition of getting to play against LeBron James, the best player in the world. I think he will be honored. He will consider it a privilege to compete against LeBron James. So I look at this and I say, the only thing that the Spurs hate right now is that they hate themselves for what they let happen at the end of Game 6 last year. They despise what they let slip through their fingers in the last 28 seconds, which was an NBA championship. So this is my only takeaway from this. This is my armchair psychology view of LeBron James. Is he trying to be Jordan-esque here? Is he trying to do what Michael Jordan so often did, especially during the playoffs, which is contrive a feud that is not there, that did not exist, just to motivate himself as opposed to making it us versus them, because there's no them in this equation. I don't know, and I couldn't blame LeBron for trying to do that, although I hate to put LeBron James in the same sentence with Michael Jordan, but I'll give him a Jordan-esque tactic here.
The answer to that question is who cares? Whatever works, works.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is that it's the NBA Finals, and anything that you can conjure up, manufactured or otherwise, is something that could potentially work to your advantage. I rarely sit around and play the role of armchair psychologist the way that you do, but let me take a stab of it here from the other side. If you're the San Antonio Spurs, and LeBron James and these boys have just conjured this up, and they've come up with this, and all of a sudden the media jumps on it, and they parade you and bombard you with questions pertaining to that.
Okay.
Can be a bit irritating. Can be a bit irritating. And if it's irritating, who knows what it would turn into. And if it turns into something even remotely hostile compared to what it used to be, then that's something that could potentially work either for or against Miami, but you take your shots at it. I recall at the conclusion of last year's NBA Finals, one of the things that irritated Skip Bayless most wasn't just Ray Allen's heartbreaking 3, wasn't just Tim Duncan's missing the lane and the tip back, but it was also how affectionate and friendly and almost loving Greg Popovich seemed at the end.
Thank you for reminding me. Now I'm really ticked off.
To people like myself and most normal human beings, we have absolutely no problem with it whatsoever, because we're able to look at it and say the finals have concluded. It's incredible sportsmanship. It's not as if the San Antonio Spurs left anything on the table. They gave it all they had. They lost because they collapsed at key pivotal moments, a key miss by Manu Ginobili, a key free throw miss by Kawhi Leonard, Manu Ginobili and his horrific performance in Game 6. Okay, Tony Parker shooting 25% combined in Game 6 and 7. I mean, we could point to a lot of different things, but effort ain't one of them. The San Antonio Spurs did everything they could to win the basketball game. They lost the championship. It broke their hearts, but they just showed incredible professionalism and sportsmanship, which is something most normal folks applaud. Not Skip Bayless.
No, not at that moment.
Not at that particular moment, because Skip Bayless was upset. What I'm saying to you is that if you're LeBron and D. Wade and these boys, and that's what you want, whether you believe it or not, if it's what you want the public to believe, I mean, who knows whether or not that could work to your advantage in this series. So I have no problem with it. The gamesmanship, the mental warfare, the tricks, all of this stuff doesn't bother me at all. Coaches engage in it, players engage in it. This is just the latest. Worst case scenario is this is the latest. Who cares? They still got to play starting Thursday.
Okay. My friend Stephen A. Smith just delivered some insightful psychological analysis of his debate partner.
Okay.
Because you're dead right. I'm glad you reminded me of that. I'm still sore from that, like I'm raw from it. Now that you bring it back up, I forgot just how upset I was. This is one small thing I don't love about my San Antonio Spurs. They don't, it's always about them. They're completely passive toward the opponent.
Yep.
They love the opponent.
Yep.
And sometimes to a fault, because it has been quite a while since they actually won the NBA championship. So maybe this is a little different this time. Not that they hate the Heat, but they really hate what happened at the end of Game 6. So I'm all for that. And by the way, I still embrace what Timmy Duncan said at the end of Game 6 in Oklahoma City, which is, we'll do it this time.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't think that was out of character for a San Antonio Spurs?
That was especially for Tim Duncan.
For him to say that?
It definitely resonated with me. It was very calmly delivered.
It was.
He didn't engage in any demonstrative or bombastic terminology or anything like that. But for Tim Duncan, it might as well have been, because those are things he simply does not say. And it just illuminated for me what I'd been saying all along, that not only do they want a championship, but they feel the one that Miami has belongs to them.
Right.
It should have been theirs. And they didn't just want the championship, they wanted Miami.
Right.
But what I love about it is that, see, for me, Skip, especially in the sports period, but especially in the sport of basketball, which I love so much, I love when things are highlighted to a point where you're able to separate the men from the boys.
Yep. Normally
it's a Game 7, and we get that. But the flip side to it is that it's also moments where people are stomping, not tippy-toeing. They're shouting. They're not whispering. They're letting you know they're coming to take what you have. So for me, when I look at a moment like this, unlike when he lost in the finals to San Antonio when he was a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers, even unlike when he lost to Dallas, because I don't think it's just the Dallas Mavericks that beat the Miami Heat and LeBron James in their first year in Miami. I think the world was coupled with Dallas, and it was just so much that ultimately it was just too much to overcome because of the decision, the residual impact of it all, what he had to deal with that year. I'm remembering how Dwayne Wade never left his side during any interview. He was with them the whole year. LeBron didn't do one-on-ones with anybody, okay? I'm just thinking about those things and just how the weight of the world was on his shoulders because it was against them, not just the Dallas Mavericks.
Okay.
And ultimately, it proved too much to overcome. This is a particular situation where you have the freedom of it all. You're a two-time champion.
Right.
You've completely resurrected yourself. You're a four-time league MVP. Nobody's questioning your greatness. They recognize that you know. They recognize he's a champion, and they recognize he's one of the greats.
Okay.
All of that's cemented. So now it's just about you have to ball. And the fact that San Antonio has announced, we know they're coming, but the fact that they have announced that they're coming,
we'll get it.
I know D. Wade better than I know LeBron. And I know that D. Wade's the kind of dude that goes like this, okay, and with a smile on his face.
Totally agree.
We'll see what LeBron
He's the
does.
one I fear with we'll do it this time.
That's right.
Because he didn't have anything or much to say about it yesterday.
Doesn't
Chris
have.
Bosh had a lot to say. He said, hey, when we need to lock back in, we will remember that quote. Okay, that's a lot of just talk,
Right,
okay? But Dwayne Wade with that little half smile of his, that's the guy I fear with this quote. But I'm going to go back to end this up with my armchair psychoanalysis of LeBron James. I think he's running out of some mental gas right now, and I do not blame him. And you and I both have talked several times during the playoffs about odd games where all of a sudden you'll say, Man, he was just flat tonight. I don't know what happened to him. Well, we saw it in the finals last year. Did we not see a couple of flat, sort of inexplicable LeBron games last year where we were talking about, where was he tonight? What was up with that game? Even game one. Remember, he was a little flat in game one. I think he's still reaching inside himself for any, again, Jordan-esque
motivation.
Yeah, listen, it's like his own tactic, his own Lance Stephenson. He's doing Lance on himself. Just some way to push his own button, which is, oh, they don't like us. He knows in his heart of hearts that Pop loves him like Pop loves Tim Duncan. I think it's close between those two.
It doesn't matter. San Antonio, that's not their makeup. They don't conduct themselves that way. They don't get into any of that stuff. They just perform. That's what they do. So that's why it probably comes across as being manufactured by LeBron. But in the end, it does not matter. I don't care what he has to do. I don't care if he has to lie about one of them stealing something from his house. I could care less. You know, I'm just saying. Well, the way the San Antonio Spurs are, they probably would never. They never stole a day in their life. But the point that I'm trying to make to you, the point that I'm trying to make to you is whatever he has to manufacture to get himself ready.
I'll buy that.
I don't care. I'm not judging him on that. What I'm going to judge him by is how he performs. And in the end, I believe LeBron is going to show up. He is going to perform big time. He's going to be ready because he will need to be ready. Because even at his best, there's a legitimate chance that at least a couple of games, the Miami Heat are going to get annihilated. When the San Antonio Spurs start raining those threes on you, there's at least a couple of games. I could see San Antonio winning by 25 or 30. I mean, at least a couple of games. But you got to win 4 to win the championship. And I don't think that's happening.
That means LeBron has to come to play 4 times. And I don't think that's happening.
Well, he did last year.
Well,
Game 1.
That was last year.
Thursday, ABC, 9 Eastern. Stephen A., you mentioned yesterday that you felt that the road to the finals for the Heat was easy, perhaps being an advantage for them. So let's talk about that. They played the Bobcats and the Nets in the first 2 rounds. And if those teams were in the West, they would not have made the playoffs. No argument, obviously, folks, that the East is not as tough as the West. Spurs had a very tough first round against the Mavericks to win in 7, Trailblazers, and then OKC. Let's consider the road to the finals. Explain why you feel the team you think has the advantage.
Because I think that when you're an experienced bunch, rest is the ultimate thing. Resting your body, being able to heal, not being exhausted by the mental challenges. We just brought up how LeBron may have been mentally fatigued, exhausted, et cetera, at times. I certainly felt that was the case with him in Game 5 against the Indiana Pacers, simply because he's had to carry the Heat all season long. Dwayne Wade missed 28 games. There have been games where Bosh didn't show up, and I think Bosh is a quality player, and I think he's a key in this series, and we'll talk about him a little bit later on in the show. But I'm saying all of this to say that yes, San Antonio, sometimes going through the terrain, it's almost like a boxer. If you get hit, then you're accustomed to getting hit, so you know what it feels like and you can take it. But there's also those punches that take a lot of punches, and you can end up getting yourself knocked out because the punishment that you've absorbed, your body just said enough's enough. I look at San Antonio and what they had to go through. They handled Portland far easier than most of us thought. They definitely, beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. We understand that. But when I look at the Miami Heat, you ran through Charlotte, which was no matchup for you, especially after Al Jefferson's plantar fascia. So then the second round, the Brooklyn Nets. Boy, was I disappointed. I expected, even without Brook Lopez, I expected more. We now learned in the aftermath that Darren Williams had to have both of his ankles operated on, so he wasn't 100%. But you had and KG. Listen, KG, Father Time is undefeated. And clearly it caught up to him because we got to a point where we were happy that KG scored. And so when you look at it from that perspective and you look at the fact that Paul Pierce has been around for so many years, even though he's big time in closing moments over the course of 48 minutes for an entire series, he's not going to be what he used to be. And so Brooklyn wasn't what we anticipated or hoped they would be. So you had a 5-game series there, one in which LeBron dropped 49 39 in one game, by the way, after Brooklyn talked smack to him. And then after that, you go to the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Indiana Pacers were nothing but a shell of themselves. Nothing what we expected, and we saw that coming for the last 2 months prior to the Eastern Conference Finals. Paul George, as Larry Bird acknowledged yesterday, is not there yet as a superstar. Roy Hibbert, everybody's conceding, needs to get tutelage and counseling from a Hall of Fame center. George Hill is not a point guard.
Nope.
Lance Stevenson is a head case, even though I think that people have been entirely too hard on him. Lance Stevenson deserves his money, and I hope he gets it. And so when you look at it from that perspective, the Indiana Pacers simply weren't what they were supposed to be. So if you're the Miami Heat, Charlotte, Brooklyn, Indiana, you really didn't have that tough of a road.
Right.
It really wasn't mentally tough. And as a result of that, you're not just rested physically, but you're rested mentally and emotionally. And to be ready to go up against the San Antonio Spurs, you need all of those things when you're an experienced bunch. You need the work and the experience and the repetition if you're a younger team. But when you are an older team like Miami, you need the rest. They have it, and I think because of it, it puts them in a better situation to win the finals.
This is a fascinating phenomenon to me, and I do not completely disagree with the points you just made, because clearly we're dealing with a team going for a three-peat, so it's not like they haven't done this before. We just watched them do it twice before. But never before have we had 2 more different roads to the final. The Spurs road, I think, was through the deepest and toughest Western Conference playoffs I can ever remember, all the way down to the 8th seed Dallas Mavericks. So the Spurs, as you recall, had to fight through 7 games through Dirk and Vince Carter and Rick Carlisle. And then, yeah, they made fairly short work of the Portland Trail Blazers. But listen, Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge, they're no jokes, to quote you. They're not exactly scrubs. They are serious business. I'm going to remind everybody again, I had to sit through a whole 2-hour show at the All-Star break on All-Star Friday, and every guest we had picked the Portland Trail Blazers to win the West. Yeah. So it took, what was it, 5 games for San Antonio to dispense with them, but I think it took a little out of it. Remember, we're dealing now with a 38-year-old superstar in Tim Duncan and an almost 37-year-old Manu Ginobili. And Tony Parker's no spring chicken now in his early 30s. So then the Spurs run up against their arch nemesis with 2 25-year-old superstars. I'm going to give you today superstars because they're ranked as 2 of the top 5 players in the world, in obviously Durant and Westbrook. And Ibaka had been their boogeyman nemesis. They had not been able to solve Ibaka for really about 3 years. So you don't think that was a tough road? And I'm going to remind you, Chris Paul and Blake Griffin are not in the finals. Dwight Howard and James Harden are not in the finals. In our audience right now, those are their stars. You know, that's who they, a lot of people wanted to see those people in the finals. The Spurs are in the finals, and it took a lot out of them. But I'm going to look at it as glass half full because no Spurs team has ever been more fire-tested to get to a finals, to get ready for a finals, than this team has. To me, Miami's playoffs are just starting, and I'm not sure that's a great thing. I'm not sure Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley right now are sitting back saying, boy, I'm glad we got to rest and just cruise control through those. Because all of a sudden the RPM is going to go way up on Thursday night in San Antonio, and it might be hard in the beginning, at least for a half, for the Heat to match the RPM that the Spurs are playing at. Because, listen, that Game 6 in Oklahoma City, that was the most impressive win of any team throughout any final, throughout any of the playoffs. That was so impressive that they're going to carry that over with 5 days to rest themselves. I think you're going to see the Spurs at an extremely high level in Game 1, and I'm not sure the Heat will be able to match that.
Well, first of all, the Heat will match anything with anybody over the course of a series because they're not going to get swept. They'll figure out a way to win a game. And if they figure out a way to win 1 game, chances are they'll figure out a way to win 2, 3, and possibly 4. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is that when you look at the San Antonio Spurs, and the points that you made are valid, but 7 games against Dallas, 5 games against Portland, 6 games against Oklahoma City. Dallas is just exceptionally well coached by one of the great coaches in this game, and Rick Carlisle, who doesn't get enough credit. Portland is a young team. Damian Lillard can ball. LaMarcus Aldridge is a stud. Young team, You know, I like Wes Matthews, by the way. I like him a lot. I like him a great deal. And Mo Williams is a good component on that team as well.
And by the way, he pulled his groin, and I think the Spurs got a little break on that.
That's right, okay. Yeah. But then you also have Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, and we understand that. None of them are LeBron. None of them are two-time champions.
I buy that.
And and again, I keep emphasizing this point whenever I speak about this series. You are coming to take what he has. You are coming to take what D. Wade has.
That's true.
And you got to remember, Skip, a few months ago, I sat down one-on-one with Dwayne Wade. Yeah, he's going to play in all likelihood. He didn't rule out retirement. Dwayne Wade's got a lot of things going on in his life that are very, very positive. Dwayne Wade has a lot of things going on that could propel him to say, I don't know if I need to do this anymore. If he wins, he's a 4-time champion. He's unquestionably the greatest Heat ever in terms of the collective body of work that he's put forth. Certainly he's not the greatest player on the Miami Heat right now, but in terms of his body of work, there is no one that measures up. Okay? And so when you look at it from that perspective, we don't know what Dwayne Wade is going to do. Therefore, we don't know what his mentality is. And we need to understand that when crunch time arrives, it's not like Eric Spoelstra is going to say, LeBron, can you save us? He's going to say, D. Wade. There you go. You understand? So when you've got D. Wade in the mix, okay, now we have to look at the San Antonio Spurs and say, we understand and respect the fact that Ginobili, you ain't what you was in the finals. You lost some weight. You got yourself in shape. You look considerably better than you did last year. And we expect you to perform. Danny Green with your 27 threes. Okay, we got that. We got that. We get all of that. Kawhi Leonard, we know that you're a young star with a lot of promise, even though you went 2 or 3 games when you only averaged 7 points against Oklahoma City. But this is Dwayne Wade.
Okay.
And let's keep that in mind and understand that LeBron James is not alone. Dwayne Wade is going to have something to say about whether or not Miami's going. And by the way, last point, experience sometimes is the best teacher. Hey, they lost in Dallas 2 years ago. You don't think Dwayne Wade sits back and goes like this? You know, 3 years ago, rather. You don't think Dwayne Wade sits back and goes like this? There are things that I could have done differently. I was helping bring LeBron along. LeBron elevated himself to that level and showed it in Oklahoma against Oklahoma City and ultimately against the Spurs. But I might have sat back a little bit. I might have done too little myself in trying to facilitate, you know, the maturation and the growth of both Bosh and LeBron in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here. Now it's about, okay, I got a legacy of my own. Okay. The time is running out. Don't think that I'm going to just sit back and watch or depend on LeBron. There's something I could do, too. Dwayne Wade will have something to say about these finals. Okay.
But yesterday, you hinged your entire Heat in 7-game pick on this show on the greatest player on the planet, LeBron James.
Not my entire.
Okay, but that's all I heard.
Yeah, that's all you heard.
Okay.
But I mentioned D. Wade yesterday, too.
Okay, here's my takeaway. My bottom line to this whole discussion. I do not fear, for somebody, I picked the Spurs, okay? Picked the Spurs in 6.
You did.
I do not fear LeBron James. I respect him, but I do not fear him. I fear Dwayne Wade. Wow. And the more you talk about him, the more afraid I get of my pick, because that's the bad man in this series.
Well, listen. LeBron is a bad man, too. And you should be ashamed of yourself for saying that when the last time you saw the man in this predicament, it was Game 7 of an NBA Finals, where he dropped 37.
They were emotionally shocked.
You can't say that.
I can't.
Let me tell you why. You can't say that if Tim Duncan hits that shot in the lane.
I forgot about the little tip.
That's right, and the little tip that followed. Skip, that was less than 2 minutes left, and the game was tied. If that's flat, I'm sorry. Listen. Don't give me flat with San Antonio. I understand what happened in Game 6. Skip, I understand what happened in Game 6, but they showed up in Game 7 too. But so did Dwayne Wade, and LeBron had 37. You need to respect that man more than you have. You really need to stop it.
I said I respected him.
Okay. Well, part of respecting him is understanding that he's somebody you need to fear.
No fear. No fear.
I suspect suspect
LeBron James, I do not fear you.
I suspect there will be at least 3 games where LeBron will make you eat those words.
Skip Bayless does not fear LeBron James. He fears Dwayne Wade.
All LeBron James has to do is play. Leave Skip Bayless to me.
You gonna get him?
I'll be there.
He gonna get you.
I'll be there.
I'm not sure you're going to be in San Antonio.
I'll show up. No, I'll show up. I might not be there game 1, but I'll show up. I'll show up.